Who's ready for some butt-kicking martial arts action? Jean-Claude Van Damme stars in The Last Mercenary. So does this French Netflix movie bring the roundhouse kicks and body blows that we have come to expect from Van Damme? Or has it withered like so many aging action stars? A mysterious former Secret Service agent must urgently return to France when his estranged son is falsely accused of arms and drug trafficking by the government following a blunder by an overzealous bureaucrat and a mafia operation. Double impact, kickboxer, universal soldier, hard target, time cop. In the early 90s, if you were looking for an action star who could kick butt, you were probably looking at Jean-Claude Van Damme. In this, Van Damme plays Richard, or as he's better known, the Mist. He's a former secret agent who, in a deal with the government, had his son Archibald set up with immunity, and he also gets a monthly stipend in exchange for Richard to disappear completely. Archibald is then caught in a mishap caused by a government official, and then Richard has to return to help Archie. There's also a scheme by some bad guys to gain access to a device that can render electronics useless. Now, pieces of this feel like they're a cross between Airplane, Mr. Bean, and Peter Sellers' Inspector Clouseau, at least in how it's executed. There are some nonsensical or maybe even goofy situations where the story attempts to be silly, but instead it just feels more cringy. Now, the fight sequences are choreographed well, and they tap into Van Damme's martial arts skills. The hand-to-hand combat is quick and it's violent, and it's hard to believe that Van Damme is 61 because he is still super flexible and he's able to perform all those crazy moves. He's fun to watch, especially when he's willing to look bizarre for his character. He dresses up in strange outfits to maintain his anonymity, which also helps him avoid capture. So the disguises are quite obvious to us as the audience, but they're effective within the story. The supporting cast brings some good but awkward humor to the narrative. Each of the characters is sort of bumbling, even though they can rein in their quirks enough to be effective. Momo, Archibald, and Alexandre get to play up their silliness, and I really like them because while they were a lot, they typically weren't over the top in stupid absurdity. Dalila was a good assistant to Van Damme's Richard. She's smart, cunning, and even dangerous. Now, two characters that really embrace her ridiculousness are Paul and this Tony Montana wannabe. They play up their characters' eccentricities effectively, but also annoyingly, which I guess is the desired effect. The action is pretty much the only reason to watch this. From car chases to martial arts battles to even a semi-naked man riding down the boulevard on a motorized scooter. Those scenes are fun and they're executed effectively to create some excitement. And as fun as some of this is, the story though, unfortunately it's uneven and even semi-convoluted. This feels like it's several small scenes that are then slapped together. And several of the characters seem to be only included to have an additional line of dialogue, but they don't really add anything to the story. The plot feels very contrived and even like it could have come out of the 90s, and not in a good way. There's a device that is kind of like an EMP that can disable all electronics around it, and the bad guy wants it for nefarious purposes. That does feel very 90s action movie plot to me. And most of the characters don't have any development. We understand who Richard is and who Archibald is, but for the rest of everybody else, they're just kind of interchangeable within the story. Some characters are also added in to try and add depth to Richard, but they don't accomplish this because the dialogue and interactions aren't intriguing in the slightest. The mystery or intrigue of the villains, it's not interesting either. One character loathes Richard, and he has for a long time. It's the focal point of any interaction between the two, but it's also resolved almost instantly, and then it doesn't feel earned or even plausible. And while there are some surprises to the story, it's a fairly generic action flick that feels like it would have been more at home in the 90s, except this one just doesn't have as many explosions. I really wanted to like this more, and I had been looking forward to some nostalgic action. The camera is able to capture the fights and chases really well, even if it sometimes utilizes too many quick cuts. I like Van Damme and enjoyed the fact that he can still perform, and then combine that with the fact that he doesn't take himself too seriously and he can have a lot of silly fun with his character. I just wish the story would have been more compelling and less like a reworked action movie from the 90s. I like what the narrative was trying to accomplish in the relationship between Richard and Archibald also. The estranged father-son dynamic is something that could really be explored and then built out to create a very deep and moving story. But the script keeps it fairly surface level even when it attempts to go deeper at certain moments. Overall, this isn't a terrible waste of an hour and 50 minutes. The action is there to add some excitement, but I think you're going to be longing for more action during the in-between scenes. I don't think this is something that needs to be binged immediately, but if you are in the mood for a bit of late century nostalgia and want to see an older guy be able to do the splits and then deliver roundhouse kicks, you might want to give this one a watch at some point. There's no sex or nudity, a bunch of profanity, and a lot of violence. I give The Last Mercenary 2.5 out of 5 couches. So do you have a favorite Van Damme movie? Let me know what it is in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.